She entered the marriage, ready to be broken, but was shielded by the billionaire called the Beast. Jessica's hands trembled as she folded the eviction notice into smaller and smaller squares, like if she could make it tiny enough, it might disappear completely. 60 days. She sat in her mother's room at Riverside Care Facility in Williamsburg, Virginia, watching Mom's hands quiver against the blanket. The Parkinsons had gotten worse this year, much worse, and the bills had gotten higher, much higher. "You're doing that thing again, baby," her mother said, her voice soft but clear. At 62, Rita Morris still had sharp eyes that caught everything. "Folding paper when you're worried." Jessica was 34 years old, held 2 jobs, and still couldn't make rent. She smoothed the notice flat against her thigh. "Just thinking about work, Mom." "Mm-hmm." Her mother's mouth curved, unconvinced. "And I'm just tired, not dying." "Don't say that." "It's true, though. I'm tired. You're exhausted, and you're lying to me about something. My beautiful family, welcome to Romance and Love Stories. Here, we don't just tell stories. We breathe life into the kind of love that finds you when you least expect it, the kind that changes everything, the kind that reminds you why the heart never gives up. If this is your first time here, go ahead and subscribe and turn on your notifications, because every story we share carries a message meant for someone. And if you've been with us before, thank you, truly. Your support keeps this community growing. Settle in, stay with us till the very end, drop a comment so we know how you feel, and don't forget to like this video. Now, let's dive deep. Jessica looked out the window at the York River glinting in the afternoon sun. Williamsburg was beautiful this time of year, all blooming dogwoods and tourists walking the historic streets. She'd grown up here, knew every brick in colonial Williamsburg, every path along the river. But beautiful didn't pay bills. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her landlord, then another from the pharmacy about her mother's prescriptions. "I need to go pick up your medications," Jessica said, standing quickly. "With what money?" The question hung there between them, honest and brutal. Jessica kissed her mother's forehead, breathing in the lavender lotion the nurses used. "I'll figure it out. I always do." But walking out to her car, a 2009 Honda with a check engine light that had been on for 6 months, Jessica felt the weight of all those figures pressing down on her shoulders. She worked as a paralegal at a small firm downtown and picked up weekend shifts at a bakery near Merchant Square. She was already working 60 hours a week. There was nothing left to cut, nothing left to sell, nowhere left to squeeze. She sat in her car and let herself have 30 seconds to fall apart. Then she drove to the pharmacy, where she'd have to split the prescriptions again, choosing which medications her mother needed most this week. Gilbert Erickson stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his estate on the James River, watching storm clouds gather over the water. His house sat on 40 acres just outside Williamsburg, a modern glass and stone structure that had cost $12 million and felt exactly as empty as that number suggested. At 37, he was worth $3.2 billion. His tech company had revolutionized cybersecurity systems. He had homes in 4 countries, and he was so goddamn lonely he sometimes left the television on just to hear human voices. His assistant's voice came through his phone. "The contracts are ready for your signature, Mr. Erickson, and your grandmother called again." Gilbert's jaw tightened. "What did she want?" "To remind you about Sunday dinner. She said, and I quote, 'Tell that boy if he misses another family meal, I'm driving down there myself.'" At 89, Astrid Erickson was the only person on earth who still scared him. She'd raised him after his parents died when he was 22, turned his grief into ambition, his rage into empire. She was also the only person who refused to call him by the name the business world used. The Beast. He'd earned it. Hostile takeovers, ruthless negotiations, competitors crushed without mercy. He didn't apologize for it. The world respected strength, not kindness. "Tell her I'll be there," Gilbert said, ending the call. He looked at his reflection in the darkening window. 6'3", broad-shouldered, with the kind of face people called harsh. Sharp jaw, piercing blue eyes, a mouth that rarely smiled. He'd learned early that showing softness was showing weakness. After his parents died in that car accident, he'd built walls so high even he couldn't see over them anymore. His phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer. Found someone. Jessica Morris, 34, paralegal. Clean record. Situation makes her ideal candidate. Details attached. Gilbert opened the file, studying the photograph of a black woman with natural curls pulled back in a ponytail, brown eyes that looked tired, a face that was pretty in an understated way. Not magazine beautiful, real beautiful. The report laid out her life in clinical terms. Father abandoned the family when she was 5, mother in care facility with advancing Parkinson's, facing eviction, medical debt exceeding $90,000. Working 2 jobs, no criminal record, no scandals, limited social media presence, desperate enough to say yes, perfect enough that his grandmother might actually believe it. Gilbert made the call. Set up the meeting, tomorrow. Make it somewhere public so she doesn't feel threatened. And if she refuses? She won't. Gilbert looked at the numbers again. 90,000 in debt, 60 days until eviction. Offer her whatever she needs to say yes. He ended the call and returned to watching the storm roll in over the river, feeling something uncomfortable twist in his chest. This was a business transaction. Nothing more. He needed a wife to satisfy his grandmother's ultimatum about the family trust. Jessica Morris needed money to save her mother. It was clean, simple, completely logical. So why did he feel like he was about to step off a cliff? The next morning, Jessica sat in a corner booth at the Trellis restaurant in Merchant Square, wondering if this was some kind of elaborate scam. The man who'd called himself Mr. Erickson's attorney had been very clear. Show up at 10, come alone, hear the proposal, no obligation. She'd almost blocked the number. But then she'd looked at her bank account, looked at the stack of bills on her kitchen counter, looked at her mother's medication schedule, and thought, what's 1 hour? Now, watching a man in an expensive suit approach her table, Jessica felt her stomach drop. She recognized him. Everyone in Williamsburg knew Gilbert Erickson, at least by reputation. Tech billionaire, philanthropist. The man who'd donated $15 million to restore historic sites in the area but never attended the ceremonies. The man they called the Beast because he destroyed companies the way other people swatted flies. He was taller than she'd expected. Broader. His suit probably cost more than her annual salary, and his eyes were the coldest shade of blue she'd ever seen, like winter sky over frozen water. Ms. Morris? His voice was deep, controlled. Thank you for meeting me. Jessica's mind went completely blank. You're Gilbert Erickson. I am. He sat down without asking, moving with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. I have a proposal for you. Your lawyer said that. I'm still not clear on what kind of proposal requires this level of secrecy. Marriage? Jessica blinked. Once, twice. Surely she'd heard him wrong. I'm sorry? I need a wife. He said it like he was ordering office supplies. My grandmother controls a significant portion of the family trust. She's 89 and has decided I need to be married before she'll release my full inheritance. I've assessed various candidates, and you're the most suitable. The most suitable? Jessica's voice came out flat. For marriage, to you. A man I met 30 seconds ago. It would be contractual, 2 years. You'd live in my home, attend necessary social functions, present as my wife in public. In exchange, I'll pay off all your mother's medical debts, cover her care facility costs for life, and provide you with a house and $5 million when the contract ends. Jessica's brain stuttered over the numbers. $5 million. Medical debts paid, her mother's care secured. This is insane, she whispered. It's practical. Gilbert's expression didn't change. You need money. I need a wife. I've had you investigated. You're exactly what I require. Smart, respectable, no scandals. You work 2 jobs to care for your mother. That shows character, loyalty, the kind of person my grandmother would believe I'd fall for. Investigated. The word tasted bitter. You had me investigated. Of course. This is a business arrangement. I needed to ensure you were appropriate. Jessica should have stood up, should have thrown her water in his face, should have told him to go to hell with his billions and his cold eyes and his marriage proposal delivered like a hostile takeover. But she thought about her mother's hands shaking, about the eviction notice, about working until she couldn't remember what it felt like to not be tired. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "If you're so rich, why not marry someone from your world?" Something flickered in those icy blue eyes. "Because someone from my world would want something I can't give. They'd want love, romance, a real marriage." He leaned forward slightly. "I'm offering you honesty, Ms. Morris. I don't do love. I don't do feelings. I do contracts, terms, clear expectations. You need security. I need a wife. We can help each other without pretending this is something it's not." Jessica looked at this man, this stranger, this beast, and saw something she recognized. Loneliness. Deep down under all that ice and control, buried so far, he probably didn't even know it was there anymore. He was broken too, just in a different way. "I need to think about it," Jessica said. "You have until Monday." Gilbert stood, pulled out a business card, set it on the table. "Call that number with your decision. If you agree, my lawyers will draw up the contracts." He walked away without looking back, moving through the restaurant like he owned it. Maybe he did. Jessica sat there holding his business card, feeling like her entire life had just tilted sideways. Her phone buzzed. The care facility. Her mother had fallen during physical therapy. Nothing broken, but they wanted to discuss increasing her monitoring level, which meant increasing her costs. Jessica looked at the card in her hand, at the future it represented: security, stability, her mother safe and cared for. All she had to do was marry a man who looked at her like she was a problem to be solved instead of a person to be known. She'd walked in here ready to be broken by life. Maybe marrying a beast was just another form of breaking, or maybe it was the only way to survive. Jessica called the number on Monday morning. She'd spent the weekend running numbers, making lists, trying to find any other option that didn't involve marrying a stranger. By Sunday night, sitting in her apartment that would belong to someone else in 53 days, she'd accepted the truth. There was no other option. "I'll do it," she said when Gilbert answered. No preamble, no hesitation left to give. "Good. My lawyers will contact you today. We'll marry on Saturday." "This Saturday?" Her voice pitched higher. "That's 5 days away. The sooner we begin, the sooner it ends. Unless you need more time to prepare?" Jessica almost laughed. Prepare for what? A fake marriage to a billionaire who looked at her like a quarterly report? "No, Saturday is fine. I'll handle everything. You just need to show up." He ended the call before she could respond. That was how Jessica found herself, 5 days later, standing in front of a judge in a private office in downtown Williamsburg, wearing a simple cream dress she'd bought on clearance 3 years ago, promising to love and honor a man whose hand felt cold in hers. Gilbert wore a dark suit that probably cost more than her car. He said his vows in that controlled voice, each word precise and emotionless. When the judge pronounced them married, he kissed her cheek briefly, formally, like sealing a contract, which was exactly what this was. His grandmother hadn't attended. "She thinks we're keeping it small and intimate," Gilbert had explained in the car. "We'll visit her next month once you're settled." Settled, like she was furniture being arranged in his life. They drove to his estate in separate cars. Jessica followed his black Mercedes along the James River, watching the water glitter in the late March sunshine, feeling surreal and displaced, like she'd stepped into someone else's life by accident. The house took her breath away. Modern and massive, all glass and clean lines, it seemed to float above the river. Inside was even more stunning. High ceilings, minimal furniture, art that probably cost more than her entire education. Everything was beautiful and cold and perfect, like him. "Your room is upstairs," Gilbert said, leading her through spaces that echoed. "Second door on the right. I've had your belongings moved from your apartment. My room is at the end of the hall. There's a gym, library, office space. The kitchen is fully stocked. Make yourself comfortable." "Where are you going?" Jessica asked as he turned toward a different hallway. "I have work." He paused, looking back at her with those wintry eyes. "I usually eat dinner around 7. You're welcome to join me or eat separately, whichever you prefer. The staff will prepare whatever you want." "Staff?" "A cook comes 3 times a week. Housekeeping twice a week. Groundskeeper is needed. They're all discreet and have signed NDAs. Of course they had. Everything in Gilbert's world came with contracts and clauses. He disappeared down the hallway, leaving Jessica standing in the enormous foyer of her new home, feeling more alone than she had in her tiny apartment. She found her room. It was bigger than her entire old place, decorated in soft grays and whites, with a bathroom that had a tub you could swim in and a walk-in closet that was mostly empty except for her modest wardrobe that looked lost in all that space. Her phone rang. The care facility. "Mrs. Erickson?" The nurse sounded confused. "I'm calling about your mother's account. It shows as paid in full. The next 5 years are prepaid, actually. And there's a note here about approving all recommended treatments regardless of cost." Jessica sat down on the bed that was too soft, too big, too everything. "Yes, that's correct." "Oh, well, that's wonderful. Rita will be so pleased. We can start the new medication protocol her neurologist recommended and the physical therapy upgrade." After the call ended, Jessica sat there holding her phone, feeling the weight of what she'd done settle into her bones. This was real. She'd married a stranger. She'd sold 2 years of her life, and her mother would get the care she needed. That was what mattered. That was why she'd said yes. She lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, trying not to cry. Dinner that first night was awkward. Jessica came downstairs at 7 to find Gilbert already at the table, reading something on his tablet. The dining room could have seated 20 people easily. They sat at one end, with several feet of polished wood between them. A woman in her 50s appeared with plates of salmon, roasted vegetables, wild rice. The food was restaurant quality. They ate in silence for several minutes. "How's your mother?" Gilbert asked finally, not looking up from his tablet. "Good. Better. The facility called about the account." "Thank you." "It was part of our agreement." "Right. The agreement. The contract. The business arrangement." Jessica set down her fork. "Can I ask you something?" He looked at her then, those blue eyes sharp and assessing. "Yes." "Why do you need your grandmother's approval so badly? You're 37. You've built an empire. Why do you care about the family trust?" Something shifted in his expression. Not quite emotion, but a shadow of it. "My parents left everything to her when they died. She was supposed to distribute it when I turned 25, but she said I wasn't ready, said I was too angry, too reckless, would waste it or use it to hurt people." He picked up his wine glass, studied it. "She was probably right, so she made conditions. Build my own success first. Show her I could create, not just destroy. Prove I was more than my grief and rage." "And the marriage condition?" "She added that on her 85th birthday, said she wasn't leaving this world without knowing I had someone to soften the edges, someone to come home to." His mouth twisted into something bitter. "She believes in love. I believe in terms and conditions. We've agreed to disagree." Jessica heard the loneliness underneath his words, even if he didn't. "You really don't believe in love?" "I believe in things that can be quantified, measured, controlled." He met her eyes directly. "Love is chaos. It destroys as much as it creates. My parents loved each other desperately. And then they died together in a car accident, leaving me with nothing but grief and money and no idea how to survive either one. Love didn't save them. Love didn't comfort me. So no, Jessica, I don't believe in it." The way he said her name, for the first time since they'd met, did something strange to her heart. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "about your parents. It was 15 years ago. Grief doesn't have an expiration date." He studied her for a long moment, like she'd said something unexpected. Then he returned to his tablet. "You should visit your mother tomorrow. I've arranged for a car service. Use it whenever you need." "I have my own car." "That car is a safety hazard. Use the service." It should have annoyed her, his high-handed assumptions, but Jessica was too tired to fight about it, and honestly, not worrying about her car breaking down sounded like a luxury she could get used to. They finished dinner in silence. Gilbert disappeared back to his office. Jessica explored the house, room after empty room, and tried not to think about how this was supposed to be her home now. The first week passed in a strange routine. Jessica visited her mother every day. Rita cried when she heard about the marriage, though Jessica had prepared a story. Quick romance. Swept off her feet. Didn't want to wait. Her mother had looked at her with those sharp eyes and said, "Baby, you've never been swept off your feet in your life. What's really going on?" "I'm married to a good man who can help us, Mom. That's all you need to know." Gilbert worked constantly. Jessica barely saw him except at dinner, which they shared in that too-big dining room, making awkward small talk that felt like pulling teeth. He asked about her mother. She asked about his work. They spoke like colleagues forced to share a lunch break. But sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking, Jessica caught him watching her, not with desire or even curiosity, more like he was trying to figure out a puzzle he hadn't been given all the pieces to. 2 weeks in, things shifted. Jessica came downstairs one morning to find Gilbert in the kitchen, actually cooking. Pancakes, from the smell of it. He looked almost human in jeans and a gray t-shirt, his hair slightly messy. "You cook?" She couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "Sometimes, when I can't sleep." He flipped a pancake with more skill than she'd expected. "My mother taught me. She said any person who can read can follow a recipe. Want some?" "Sure." They sat at the kitchen island instead of the formal dining room. The pancakes were good, fluffy and warm. Gilbert had fresh berries and real maple syrup. "I can't sleep either," Jessica admitted. "The bed's too quiet, too soft. I keep waking up thinking I'm late for work." "You can still work if you want. The contract doesn't prohibit it." "I know, She trailed off, not sure how to explain. "Everything's different now. I don't know who I'm supposed to be here." Gilbert was quiet for a moment, pushing berries around his plate. "You're supposed to be yourself. This arrangement doesn't require you to change who you are, Jessica, just to exist in my life publicly." "And privately?" "What am I here?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something vulnerable flicker across his face before he locked it down. "I don't know yet." It was the most honest thing he'd said to her. That afternoon, Jessica was reading in the library when Gilbert appeared in the doorway. "I have a charity gala tonight, art museum fundraiser. I need you to come." "Tonight? That's not much notice. I forgot about it until my assistant reminded me an hour ago. I've arranged for a stylist to come at 4. She'll help with dress, hair, everything." Jessica wanted to argue, but saw the tension in his shoulders. This was their first public appearance as a married couple. "Okay, what should I know?" "Smile. Look happy to be with me. Don't mention the contract terms. If anyone asks how we met, we'll say through a mutual friend and connected immediately." "So lie?" "So simplify a complex situation for public consumption." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Look, I know this isn't ideal, but it's part of the deal." "I know, I'm not backing out. I'm just saying it out loud." She stood up, facing him across the library. "I'll play the happy wife tonight, Gilbert." I agreed to that, but you can't expect me to pretend this isn't strange. I don't expect anything except what's in the contract. Right, the contract. How could I forget? She walked past him, close enough to catch his scent. Something clean and woodsy, expensive cologne mixed with something distinctly him. She felt his eyes on her as she climbed the stairs. The gala was held at the Chrysler Museum, and Jessica had never felt more out of place in her life. The stylist had done her job well. Jessica wore a deep emerald gown that hugged her curves, her natural curls styled into soft waves around her face, makeup subtle but flawless. She looked elegant, sophisticated. Nothing like the woman who'd worked 60-hour weeks and eaten ramen for dinner 4 nights in a row. Gilbert had stared at her for a full 5 seconds when she came downstairs. "You look beautiful," he'd said, voice rough, and quickly looked away. Now they moved through the museum together, Gilbert's hand at the small of her back, introducing her as his wife to people who clearly hadn't known he was married. Their surprise was obvious and poorly concealed. "Gilbert, I had no idea you'd gotten married," said an older woman in diamonds. "How wonderful! And how did you two meet?" "Through a mutual friend," Gilbert said smoothly. "Sometimes you just know, don't you?" Jessica smiled and nodded and felt like a fraud. But as the evening wore on, something strange happened. Gilbert's hand stayed at her back, warm and steady. When someone made a cutting comment about modern art, he defended her opinion even though she'd barely spoken. When her feet started hurting in the borrowed heels, he noticed and suggested they sit. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "Defend me to that man." "He was being condescending. You knew more about the subject than he did." Gilbert handed her champagne. "Besides, you're my wife. Even if it's contractual, I'm not going to let people disrespect you." Something warm bloomed in Jessica's chest. "Thank you." Their eyes met and held. For just a moment, surrounded by art and strangers, something passed between them that felt almost real. Then Gilbert's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression shuttered closed again. "I need to take this. Work crisis. I'll be back." He disappeared into the crowd, leaving Jessica alone with her champagne and the feeling that she'd just glimpsed something important that had slipped away before she could name it. On the drive home, they were both quiet. The night had been successful by all measures. They'd looked like a couple, acted like partners, convinced everyone who mattered. But sitting in the car with space between them, Jessica felt the loneliness settle back over both of them like a familiar coat. "You did well tonight," Gilbert said as they pulled up to the house. "So did you." They walked inside together, climbed the stairs together, and said good night at their separate doors. Jessica lay in bed that night thinking about his hand at her back, warm and protective, about the way he'd looked at her in that green dress, about the loneliness in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. She'd entered this marriage ready to be broken by life. But maybe Gilbert Erickson was already broken, and maybe that was something they had in common. 3 weeks into the marriage, Jessica woke up to find Gilbert sitting at the kitchen island at 2 in the morning, staring at a laptop screen with an expression that looked like grief. "Can't sleep?" she asked quietly, not wanting to startle him. He looked up, and for just a second before he composed himself, she saw how exhausted he was. "Big acquisition falling through. Company I've been pursuing for 18 months just accepted a competing offer." Jessica poured herself water, hesitated, then sat down across from him. "I'm sorry. It's business. Win some, lose some." But his jaw was tight, his shoulders rigid with tension. "You don't have to do that with me," Jessica said softly. "Pretend it doesn't matter. It's 2 in the morning. You should be sleeping." "So should you." She studied his face, seeing the cracks in his armor. "How long since you've taken a day off?" "I don't take days off." "Maybe that's the problem." Gilbert's eyes flashed with something sharp. "You've been here 3 weeks, Jessica. Don't presume to understand how I run my life." The words stung, precisely because they were designed to. Jessica stood up. "You're right. Forgive me for caring." She was halfway to the stairs when his voice stopped her. "Wait." Jessica turned. Gilbert had his head in his hands, elbows on the counter, looking more human and broken than she'd ever seen him. "I'm sorry," he said, voice rough. "That was uncalled for. I'm just—" He trailed off, shook his head. "My parents died because my father was too tired to be driving. He'd worked 72 hours straight closing a deal, fell asleep at the wheel, and I'm sitting here at 2 in the morning, exhausted, choosing work over sleep, and I can't seem to stop myself from becoming exactly what killed them." Jessica's heart cracked open. She walked back, sat down beside him, this time instead of across, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "You're not your father," she said quietly, "and you're not alone anymore. Even if this is just a contract, even if it's temporary, you have someone here who can tell you when you're pushing too hard." Gilbert looked at her then, really looked at her, and Jessica felt the air between them shift into something she couldn't name. His eyes weren't cold anymore. They were deep blue and vulnerable and searching her face like he was trying to memorize it. "Why are you being kind to me?" he asked. "This wasn't part of the agreement." "Maybe I'm tired of only doing what's in agreements." Jessica's voice came out softer than she intended. "Maybe I'm tired of pretending we're just business partners when we live in the same house and eat breakfast together and you hold my hand at charity events like you actually care." "I do care." The words seemed to surprise him as much as her. "That's the problem." The silence stretched between them, loaded with things neither of them knew how to say. Gilbert's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He grabbed it like a lifeline, reading the message with a frown. "My grandmother wants us to visit this weekend. She's invited us to Sunday dinner at her house in Richmond." "Okay, what do I need to know?" "Everything." Gilbert rubbed his eyes. "Astrid Erickson doesn't miss anything. She'll ask questions, probe, try to figure out if this is real. We need to be convincing. We've been convincing so far. At galas with strangers. This is different. She raised me. She'll know if we're lying." Jessica felt anxiety flutter in her stomach. "Then we practice. Tell me about her. Tell me what she'll want to know. We'll figure it out together." Gilbert studied her for a long moment. "You're really okay with this? Meeting her and pretending?" "I'm here, aren't I? I signed the contract. I'll do my part." Jessica paused. "But Gilbert, she's 89 years old and she loves you. Maybe instead of pretending, we just don't lie. We tell her we're figuring things out, that it's new and complicated, but we're trying. That's basically the truth." "Exactly." Something shifted in his expression, softening. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just haven't been paying attention." The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been almost a smile. "I'm paying attention now." The way he said it made Jessica's pulse quicken. She stood up quickly, needing distance. "You should sleep. Big acquisition or not, you need rest." "Jessica." She stopped at the doorway, looked back. "Thank you for caring, even when I don't deserve it." "Everyone deserves it, Gilbert. You just haven't let anyone close enough to try." She went upstairs to her room, but sleep didn't come. She lay in bed thinking about the vulnerability in his eyes, the way his voice had roughened when he said he cared, the dangerous warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with their contract and everything to do with the broken man downstairs who was starting to feel less like a stranger and more like someone she couldn't afford to fall for. Sunday arrived too quickly. They drove to Richmond together, an hour and a half in Gilbert's Mercedes with the tension thick enough to cut. He'd been quiet and distant since their 2 a.m. conversation, like he regretted showing her that glimpse of his real self. Jessica wore a simple navy dress and pearls, trying to look like someone's beloved granddaughter-in-law instead of a woman who'd married for money and security. Astrid Erickson's house was a beautiful colonial in Richmond's historic fan district, all brick and tradition and old money. Jessica's hands were sweating as they walked up to the door. Gilbert must have noticed because he took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Just breathe," he murmured. "She's going to love you." "How do you know?" "Because, despite everything, I'm starting to." Jessica's head whipped toward him, but the door opened before she could respond. Astrid Erickson was small and elegant, with white hair perfectly styled, sharp green eyes, and a smile that was warm but assessing. She looked at their joined hands, then at Jessica's face, then at Gilbert's, and something knowing flashed across her expression. "So," she said, voice crisp with a slight accent from her Swedish childhood, "this is the woman who finally caught my beast." Jessica found her voice. "Mrs. Erickson, it's wonderful to meet you." "Call me Astrid, dear. We're family now." She stepped aside, gesturing them in. "Come. I've made lunch. Gilbert, your grandfather's study needs organizing. I want Jessica to myself for a few minutes." Gilbert's hand tightened on Jessica's. "Grandma?" "Go. I won't eat her. Though I might ask questions you'd prefer she not answer." Astrid's eyes sparkled with mischief. Gilbert looked at Jessica, something almost like concern in his expression. She squeezed his hand gently. "I'll be fine." He left reluctantly, and Jessica followed Astrid into a sun-filled kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and home. "Sit, dear. Coffee? Tea?" "Coffee, please. Thank you." Astrid moved around the kitchen with practiced ease, preparing 2 cups, then sat down across from Jessica at a small table by the window. Outside, spring flowers bloomed in riotous colors. "So," Astrid said, studying Jessica over her cup, "tell me how you really met my grandson." Jessica's heart stuttered. "Gilbert said he told you. He told me you met through mutual friends, and it was instant attraction. Which is a lovely story and also complete nonsense." Astrid's expression was kind, but firm. "Gilbert doesn't do instant anything. He calculates, plans, controls. So tell me the truth, Jessica. What's really happening here?" Jessica felt panic rise in her throat. They'd barely been married a month. If Astrid knew the truth, if she disapproved, would she revoke the trust? Would Gilbert blame Jessica? But looking at this woman who'd raised a broken boy into a powerful man, who clearly loved him enough to meddle in his life, Jessica found she couldn't lie. "We have an arrangement," she said quietly. "He needed a wife to satisfy your conditions. I needed help with my mother's medical care. It's contractual. 2 years, but—" She hesitated, choosing words carefully. "But it's not what you think. Gilbert has been kind, generous, and I'm starting to think maybe we both need this marriage for reasons that have nothing to do with money or trusts." Astrid was quiet for a long moment, sipping her coffee. Jessica waited for anger, for disappointment, for everything to fall apart. Instead, Astrid smiled. "Good. Good. You told me the truth. That's more than I expected." She set down her cup. "Jessica, I've been worried about my grandson for 15 years. Since his parents died, he's built walls so high he can't see the sky anymore. He works himself half to death. He has no friends, no joy, no life beyond numbers and acquisitions and proving himself over and over to ghosts who can't hear him." Tears pricked Jessica's eyes at the accurate devastation of that description. "I didn't make marriage a condition because I care about the trust," Astrid continued. "I made it a condition because I care about him. I wanted to force him to let someone in, even if it started as business, even if it was calculated." She reached across the table, taking Jessica's hand. "But it's not business anymore, is it? Not for either of you." "I don't know what it is," Jessica admitted. "We're living together, learning each other, and sometimes I look at him and see someone I want to know better, someone I want to help. And then I remember this is temporary, and I'm supposed to leave in 2 years, and my heart does this stupid thing where it forgets that's the plan. Hearts are stubborn things. They don't care much about plans. He doesn't believe in love. He believes in not being hurt again. There's a difference." Astrid squeezed Jessica's hand. "My grandson is difficult, stubborn, emotionally constipated, but he's also loyal and brilliant and capable of extraordinary tenderness when he lets himself be. Give him time, give yourself time. See what grows when you stop trying to control it." Jessica nodded, not trusting her voice. "Now," Astrid said briskly, standing up, "let's make lunch and pretend we talked about recipes and your mother's health. Gilbert doesn't need to know we had this conversation." They worked together in comfortable silence, preparing pot roast and vegetables. When Gilbert returned, he looked between them suspiciously, but said nothing. Lunch was surprisingly pleasant. Astrid told stories about Gilbert as a child, making him groan and Jessica laugh. She asked about Rita's health with genuine concern, offered advice about navigating Parkinson's, care from her own experience with her late husband's illness. "You have a good woman here, Gilbert," Astrid said as they prepared to leave. "Don't be a fool and lose her." "I won't," he said, and something in his voice made Jessica's breath catch. The drive home was quiet until Gilbert said, "What did she ask you?" "How we met, about my mother. Normal grandmother questions." "And what did you tell her?" Jessica looked at him, at the tension in his jaw, the white-knuckle grip on the steering wheel. "I told her the truth." The car swerved slightly before he corrected. "You what?" "She already knew, Gilbert, or suspected. She's not stupid. So I told her we have an arrangement, but we're figuring out what that means." "And she was okay with that?" "She was relieved I didn't lie to her." Jessica turned in her seat to face him. "She loves you. She just wants you to be happy, to let someone in, to stop punishing yourself for being alive when your parents aren't." Gilbert's hands tightened on the wheel. "She said that?" "Not in those words, but that's what she meant." Jessica took a breath. "Gilbert, you're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to want more than work and empty houses and contracts that keep people at arm's length." "I don't know how to want more." His voice was raw, honest. "I don't know how to be what you need." "I don't need you to be anything except honest. With me. With yourself." They pulled into the driveway of the house on the James River. The sun was setting, painting the water gold and pink. Gilbert turned off the car but didn't get out. "I'm scared," he said quietly, "that if I let you in, if I let this become real, you'll leave, or worse, you'll stay, and then something will take you away like it took them. And I can't survive that again, Jessica. I barely survived it the first time." Jessica felt tears burn her eyes. She reached across the console, took his hand. "I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere for at least 2 years. Maybe we stop worrying about forever and just focus on right now." Gilbert looked at their joined hands, then at her face, and Jessica saw the exact moment he made a decision. He leaned across the space between them and kissed her. Not the formal cheek kiss from their wedding, not performative for an audience. Real, soft and questioning and terrified and hopeful all at once. Jessica kissed him back, tasting coffee and vulnerability and the beginning of something that had nothing to do with their contract. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Gilbert rested his forehead against hers. "I'm still scared," he whispered. "Me too." "But you're right. Let's focus on right now." They went inside together, hands linked, and Jessica felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She'd entered this marriage ready to be broken, expecting nothing but security and an ending date. She hadn't expected to start falling for the beast who was showing her his softest parts, and she definitely hadn't expected him to fall back. Family, if you've stayed with this story until now, it clearly touched your heart. Share your thoughts below and tell me where you're watching from. And if you haven't yet, like the video and subscribe to join our Romance and Love Stories community. Hit the hype button if this story meant something to you. It truly helps our channel grow. Let's keep going. The kiss changed everything and nothing. Gilbert didn't pull away emotionally the next day like Jessica half expected. Instead, he started coming home earlier. They cooked dinner together sometimes, moving around the kitchen in a dance that was becoming familiar. He asked about her day, listened to stories about her mother's physical therapy progress, told her about deals and problems at work in a way that felt like sharing instead of reporting. They didn't kiss again, not for 2 weeks, but the awareness was there, constant and electric, every time they passed in the hallway or sat next to each other on the couch or accidentally touched, reaching for the same coffee mug. Jessica felt herself falling deeper every day, and it terrified her. This wasn't the plan. The plan was 2 years, financial security, and a clean exit. The plan didn't include lying awake at night thinking about the way Gilbert smiled when he thought she wasn't looking, or how he'd started buying her favorite tea without being asked, or the gentleness in his voice when he talked to her mother on the phone. But plans, as Astrid had said, didn't much matter to hearts. Jessica was at the care facility with her mother one afternoon in early May when everything started to unravel. "You look different," Rita said, studying her daughter's face with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Happy. When you talk about him, your whole face lights up. Mom, don't mom me. I know what I see. You're falling in love with your husband." Jessica felt her chest tighten. "It's complicated. Love usually is." Her mother's hand, trembling slightly from the Parkinson's, reached for Jessica's. "Baby, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay." "Did you marry him for me? For the medical bills?" The silence was answer enough. Rita's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Jessica, what did you do?" "I did what I had to do." Jessica's voice broke. "You were suffering. We were drowning. He offered a solution, and I took it. A loveless marriage is not a solution. It's a prison. It's not loveless anymore." The words came out before Jessica could stop them. "At least not for me. I don't know what it is for him. We have a contract, 2 years, but somewhere along the way it stopped feeling like business and started feeling like maybe we could be real." "Does he know how you feel?" "I don't know. I'm scared to tell him. What if I'm wrong? What if he's just being kind because we live together and it's easier? What if the contract is still all this is to him?" Rita squeezed her hand. "Then you tell him anyway, because living with uncertainty is worse than living with truth, even if the truth hurts." Jessica drove home with her mother's words echoing in her head. She found Gilbert in his office, staring at his computer screen with a frown that made her stomach drop. "What's wrong?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, and the expression on his face made her go cold. "Come in. Close the door." Jessica did, her heart pounding. "Gilbert, you're scaring me." "Someone leaked information about our marriage to a business journalist. They're running a story about how Gilbert Erickson married a paralegal with significant debt right before his grandmother's trust distribution deadline. They're calling it a calculated move, a business arrangement masquerading as romance." The blood drained from Jessica's face. "How did they find out?" "I don't know. NDAs, background checks, it shouldn't have been possible, but someone talked. And now the story runs tomorrow morning." He stood up, pacing. "My competitors are going to use this, paint me as manipulative, dishonest. It could damage the company's reputation, hurt our stock price, undermine deals in progress. I'm sorry." Jessica's voice was small. "This is my fault if I hadn't agreed." "It's not your fault. I proposed this arrangement. I thought I'd covered every angle." He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "But I didn't account for someone investigating deeply enough to find the timeline, the coincidence of your debts being paid right after the marriage. It looks exactly like what it is." "What it was," Jessica corrected quietly. "It's not just a business arrangement anymore. You know that." Gilbert stopped pacing, looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Do I?" The question felt like a slap. "What does that mean?" It means I don't know what's real anymore, Jessica. I don't know if what I'm feeling is genuine or just convenience. I don't know if you're here because you want to be or because you're contractually obligated. I don't know how to separate the business from the personal when they're so tangled together. You kissed me, Jessica said, voice shaking. In the car. That wasn't business. Wasn't it? We'd just come from convincing my grandmother we were falling for each other. Maybe I got caught up in the performance. Each word was a knife. Jessica felt tears burn behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. You don't mean that. I don't know what I mean. Gilbert's voice was raw, desperate. All I know is that tomorrow morning the world is going to see proof that I'm exactly what they call me. The beast, someone who uses people for profit, who turns everything, even marriage, into a transaction. That's not who you are. Isn't it? He laughed bitterly. I offered you money for marriage, Jessica. I researched you like a stock investment. I calculated risks and benefits and decided you were the best option. That's exactly who I am. You're also the man who holds my hand when we walk, who calls my mother just to check on her, who learned to make my favorite breakfast and pretends it's no big deal, who looks at me sometimes like I'm the only real thing in your world. Jessica's voice cracked. That's who you are, too, Gilbert. Both things can be true. I can't do this right now. He turned away from her, hands gripping the edge of his desk. I have to figure out damage control, issue statements, call lawyers. I need you to prepare for media attention. Don't talk to any reporters. Don't confirm or deny anything. Just stay quiet. So we're back to that? Boss and employee, contract and terms? We never left it. The words were cold, final. That's what I've been trying to tell you. This was always temporary, always business. If you caught feelings, that's on you. The cruelty of it stole Jessica's breath. She stood there, staring at his back, at the rigid line of his shoulders, and understood. He was panicking, pushing her away before she could leave, protecting himself the only way he knew how. It didn't make it hurt any less. You're right, she said quietly. I caught feelings. That is on me. But don't you dare pretend you didn't catch them too. Don't you dare stand there and tell me the past 6 weeks meant nothing when I know they did. You're just scared, Gilbert. Scared that if you admit this is real, you'll lose it. Lose me. So you're burning it down first. Get out. His voice was barely above a whisper. Fine. But when you're done hiding behind your walls and your fear, when you're done pretending you don't care, I'll be in my room, the one down the hall from yours, in the house we share, because I signed a contract for 2 years, and I keep my promises, even when they hurt. Jessica left before the tears could fall, closing the door quietly behind her. She made it to her room, closed that door too, and then let herself break. She cried for the marriage that had started as business and become something precious, for the man who was too scared to fight for what they could be, for herself, for falling in love with someone who would rather wound them both than risk being vulnerable. Her phone rang. Her mother. Baby, are you okay? You left so upset. I'm fine, Mom. Jessica's voice came out thick with tears. You're crying. I can hear it. What happened? Jessica told her everything, the leaked story, Gilbert's panic, the cruel words designed to push her away. When she finished, she felt empty and exhausted. What are you going to do? Rita asked gently. I don't know. Stay, I guess. Fulfill the contract. Try to survive loving someone who's determined not to love me back. Or you could fight for him. He doesn't want me to fight. He wants distance, safety. He's scared, baby, terrified. But that doesn't mean you give up. Her mother's voice was firm despite its tremor. Sometimes the people worth loving are the ones who make it hardest, because they've been hurt so badly they can't imagine healing. But you're strong enough to fight through his fear. Question is, do you want to? Jessica thought about Gilbert at 2 a.m., admitting he was becoming his father. about the way he'd kissed her like she was air and he was drowning, about the vulnerability in his eyes when he said he was scared. "Yes," she whispered, "I want to." "Then fight, baby. Don't let him push you away without a battle." The story broke at 6 a.m. Jessica woke to her phone exploding with notifications. The headline was brutal. "The Beast's Calculated Romance. Tech Billionaire's Marriage Timing Raises Questions." The article laid out everything: her debt, the timeline, the marriage weeks before Astrid's trust deadline. They stopped just short of calling it fraud, but the implication was clear. Jessica went downstairs to find Gilbert already in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept at all. "Handle it," he was saying. "Issue a statement. Emphasize our privacy. Threaten legal action if they don't retract the speculation." He hung up, noticed Jessica, and his expression shuttered. "You're up early. Hard to sleep when your marriage is national news. I'm sorry you're being dragged into this." "I was already in it, Gilbert. We both were." Jessica poured coffee with shaking hands. "What's the plan?" "Lawyers are working on it. PR team is crafting a response. We need to present a unified front, appear in public together, show them this is real." "Is it?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "Real? Or are we back to performing?" Gilbert's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I want you to say that last night was fear-talking, that you didn't mean it when you said this was just business, that what we've been building these past weeks matters to you." Jessica set down her cup, faced him directly. "I want you to be honest, Gilbert. Even if the honesty is that you don't feel what I feel. At least that would be real. You want honesty?" His voice rose, frustration breaking through. "Fine. I'm terrified. Every day I'm with you I get more attached, more dependent on coming home to find you here, more addicted to the way you look at me like I'm not a monster, and it scares the hell out of me because I know how this ends. 2 years. Contract over. You leave. And I'm supposed to go back to my empty house and my empty life and pretend I never knew what it felt like to have someone care. Who says I'm leaving?" "It's in the contract. Contracts can be renegotiated." Jessica moved closer, heart pounding. "Gilbert, I love you. I didn't plan to. I tried not to. But somewhere between pancakes at 2 a.m. and meeting your grandmother and you holding my hand like it anchors you, I fell in love with you. With the brilliant, difficult, terrified man under all that ice. And I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But I'm not leaving unless you make me." Gilbert stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. "You love me?" "Yes." "That's not possible. You've known me 6 weeks. My mother fell in love with my father in 3 weeks. Then he left and broke her heart. Love doesn't follow timelines or logic, Gilbert. It just happens. And it happened to me with you." "I don't know how to do this." His voice cracked. "I don't know how to be someone's husband for real, how to be vulnerable without feeling like I'm bleeding out, how to let you in without losing myself." "Then let me teach you." Jessica reached for his hands, felt them trembling. "We figure it out together, messy and imperfect and terrified, but together. Unless you don't want that, unless last night was true and this really is just business for you, in which case tell me now. Break my heart cleanly so I can start healing." Gilbert looked at their joined hands, at her face, at the future stretching between them full of terrifying possibility. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I can't." Jessica felt her heart stop. "Can't what?" "Can't tell you it's just business. Can't let you believe I don't care. Can't watch you walk away even though every survival instinct I have is screaming at me to push you out before you leave on your own." He raised his eyes to hers, and they were full of fear and hope and devastating honesty. "I'm falling in love with you, Jessica. Maybe I already have, and it terrifies me more than any business deal or public scandal or loss I've ever faced." The tears came then, relief and joy and overwhelming emotion. Then stop fighting it. Stop fighting us. What if I lose you? What if you don't? What if we get 50 years together? What if this scary, unexpected, contractual-turned-real marriage is the best thing that ever happened to both of us? Gilbert pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She felt his heart racing against hers, felt the tremor in his hands as they pressed against her back. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered into her hair. "Neither do I. But we'll learn." They stood there in the kitchen as dawn light filled the room, holding each other through fear and uncertainty and the beginning of something real. Outside, the media storm raged. Inside, two broken people chose to stop running from love and start running toward it. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't solved, but it was honest. And for the first time since they'd married, it was real. The next 3 weeks tested everything. The media attention was relentless. Photographers camped outside their gate. Tabloids ran speculations. Business competitors used the scandal to question Gilbert's ethics. His stock price fluctuated. Board members called emergency meetings. Through it all, Gilbert and Jessica held on to each other. They gave one carefully crafted interview to a respected journalist, sitting close together on the couch in their living room. Gilbert held Jessica's hand the entire time, his grip tight and real. "Yes, our marriage began unconventionally," Gilbert had said, his voice steady. "I proposed to Jessica knowing she was facing financial hardship caring for her mother, but what started as an arrangement became something neither of us expected. We fell in love. That's the truth. The timing might look suspicious, but the feelings are real." Jessica had added, "I said yes because I was desperate and he offered help. I stayed because somewhere along the way, the man everyone calls the Beast showed me the gentlest heart I've ever known." The interview helped. The narrative shifted slowly from scandal to unexpected romance. Some people remained skeptical, but others found it compelling. The stock price stabilized, the board backed off. But the real work happened in private. Gilbert started therapy. Twice a week he drove to Richmond to see a grief counselor his grandmother recommended. He came home exhausted those days, emotionally wrung out, but gradually something in him began to soften. "She made me talk about the accident," he told Jessica one night in bed. They'd started sleeping in the same room 2 weeks ago, after a nightmare had sent Gilbert to her door at 3 a.m., and she'd simply pulled him inside and held him until dawn. "About how I blamed myself. I was supposed to meet my father that day. If I had, maybe he would have left earlier, wouldn't have been so tired." Jessica held his hand in the darkness. "You know that's not rational, right?" "Grief isn't rational. That's what she said, too." He was quiet for a moment. "I've spent 15 years building walls because I thought if I didn't care about anything, I couldn't lose anything. But I was already lost, Jess. I'd already lost myself. And now? Now I'm trying to find my way back. With you." They were learning each other in new ways. Gilbert discovered Jessica loved old movies and folk music. Jessica learned he collected first-edition books and could quote poetry when he thought no one was listening. They took walks along the James River in the evenings, cooked elaborate dinners on weekends, visited Rita together every few days, and Gilbert listened with genuine interest to her stories about raising Jessica alone. "You're good for him," Rita told Jessica during one visit while Gilbert was talking to her physical therapist. "He smiles now, real smiles. When he looks at you, I see a man who's finally found his way home." "I'm scared, Mom. What if the media attention never stops? What if his company suffers because of me? What if you just let yourself be happy? You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. Your father left, so you became the strong one. I got sick, so you worked yourself to exhaustion. But, baby, you're allowed to be loved. You're allowed to let someone take care of you for once." Jessica felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I don't know how." "Then learn. With him, because that man loves you so much. It's written all over his face. Don't let fear steal this from you. Late May brought an unexpected complication. Astrid called on a Wednesday evening, her voice tight with emotion. "Gilbert, I need you to come to Richmond. Tonight, if possible. I have something to tell you both." They made the drive in tense silence, Gilbert's hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Jessica reached over, laced her fingers through his. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it together," she said softly. He nodded but didn't speak. Astrid looked smaller somehow when she opened the door, her usual sharp elegance dimmed by something Jessica couldn't name. They sat in her living room, and she poured tea with hands that trembled slightly. "I've been to the doctor," she said without preamble. "Several doctors, actually. The diagnosis is pancreatic cancer, stage 4. They're giving me 6 months, maybe a year with treatment." The world tilted sideways. Gilbert went completely still beside Jessica, his face draining of color. "No. I'm 89, darling. I've had a good life, a long life. This doesn't come as a surprise. You can't—" His voice broke. "I just got you back. We just started talking again after years of you being angry about my choices. I can't lose you now." "You're not losing me. I'm still here." Astrid set down her teacup with careful precision. "But I need to know you'll be all right when I'm gone. That's why I made you get married, Gilbert. Not because of money or trusts or tradition, because I needed to know you wouldn't be alone when I left this world." Jessica felt Gilbert shaking beside her. She wrapped her arm around him, holding tight. "I'm choosing not to do aggressive treatment," Astrid continued. "I want quality time, not quantity. I want to spend the time I have left with the people I love, doing things that matter, which means I need to see you two actually get married." "We are married," Gilbert said roughly. "You had a courthouse ceremony for paperwork. I want to see you married with family present, with vows that mean something, with celebration and joy and all the things a wedding should be." Astrid's eyes filled with tears. "I want to see my grandson marry the woman who saved his life before I go. Please, give me that." Gilbert stood abruptly, walked to the window, his shoulders rigid. Jessica could see him fighting for control. "When?" Jessica asked gently, giving him space to process. "I'd like to plan something for mid-June. 4 weeks, small and intimate, just family and close friends in my garden, if that's agreeable to you both." "Of course it is." Jessica went to Gilbert, placed her hand on his back. "Gilbert?" "I need a minute." His voice was strangled. I can't—" He left the room abruptly, the front door closing behind him a moment later. Astrid sighed. "He's going to the oak tree. He used to climb it as a boy when things got too big to process." Jessica found him in the backyard, sitting at the base of an enormous oak tree, his head in his hands. She sat down beside him without speaking, just pressing close so he knew she was there. "Everyone I love dies," he said finally. "My parents, and now her. Everyone leaves. She hasn't left yet. She's still here. For how long? 6 months? A year? And then I'm alone again." "You're not alone. You have me." Jessica took his face in her hands, made him look at her. "Gilbert, I know you're scared. I know loss has shaped every fear you carry. But you can't protect yourself from grief by refusing to love. That's not living. That's just existing. I don't know if I'm strong enough to lose her. You are, because you've done it before and survived. And this time, you won't be going through it alone. You'll have me. Every step, every hard moment, every memory and tear and celebration of her life. We'll do it together." Gilbert pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck. She felt wetness against her skin and realized he was crying. Really crying, maybe for the first time since his parents died. She held him while he broke, while grief and fear and love poured out of him in shaking sobs. She held him and whispered promises and let him feel everything he'd been holding back for 15 years. When he finally quieted, his voice was raw and exhausted. "I want to give her the wedding. I want her to see us get married for real." "Then we will." "But Jess, That means vows. Real ones. Standing in front of people and promising forever when we have a contract that says 2 years. How do we do that? Jessica pulled back to look at him, at this man she'd fallen so completely in love with. We tear up the contract, we make new promises, we choose this marriage because we want it, not because we need it. We get married for real this time, Gilbert. No end date, no terms, just us and forever and whatever comes. You'd do that? Stay without the contract guaranteeing the house and money? I don't need guarantees. I just need you. Broken and scared and learning to love again. That's all I've ever needed. Gilbert kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promise. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he whispered. I love you so much it terrifies me. But I'm choosing it anyway. Choosing you. Choosing us. I love you too. They went back inside, hand in hand. Astrid looked up from her tea, saw their faces, and smiled. So? She asked. June 15th? June 15th, Gilbert confirmed. But I have some conditions. Astrid raised an eyebrow. Oh? I'm hiring the best oncologist in the country to review your case. You're doing whatever treatment gives you more time without destroying your quality of life. You're moving in with us so we can take care of you. And you're going to fight for every day you have left because I just got brave enough to live again. And I need you here to see it. Astrid's eyes filled with tears. Deal. The next 4 weeks passed in a blur of wedding planning, and doctor appointments, and learning to navigate grief while celebrating love. Astrid moved into their home, taking a guest suite on the first floor. The house filled with her presence, her laughter, her sharp commentary on everything from Gilbert's coffee consumption to Jessica's choice of throw pillows. You two are disgustingly in love, she said one morning at breakfast, watching them move around each other in the kitchen like they'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. It's nauseating. Also beautiful, mostly beautiful. Gilbert had kissed the top of Jessica's head. We learned from the best. The oncologist recommended a moderate treatment plan. Astrid would have some good months ahead, maybe more than 6 if they were lucky. But the prognosis hadn't changed fundamentally. This was about time, not cure. Jessica and Gilbert made every day count. They had dinners in the garden with Astrid, watched old movies together, listened to her stories about Gilbert's childhood and her own youth in Sweden. Gilbert laughed more in those weeks than Jessica had ever heard. He was lighter somehow, freer, like something heavy he'd been carrying had finally been set down. The wedding planning was simple and joyful. Jessica chose a dress with Astrid's help, something elegant and timeless in silk the color of champagne. Gilbert's suit was custom-made, dark blue that matched his eyes. They wrote their own vows in secret, not sharing them even with each other. 2 days before the wedding, Jessica's father showed up at their door. She hadn't seen David Morris in 29 years, hadn't heard from him except for a handful of birthday cards that stopped coming when she was 12. But there he was, standing on their front porch looking older and uncertain. Jessica, he said, I saw the news stories, realized it was you. I thought maybe... Gilbert appeared behind her, protective and solid. Who is this? My father. Jessica's voice came out flat. Who left when I was 5 and hasn't bothered to check if I was alive since? David flinched. I know I have no right to be here, but I'm trying to make amends. I'm sober now. 3 years. And I wanted to apologize. To explain. There's nothing to explain, Jessica said quietly. You chose alcohol over your family. You left Mom to raise me alone. You missed my entire life. And now you show up because you saw me on the news married to a billionaire? No, yes, I don't know. David looked miserable. I saw you'd gotten married, and I thought about your wedding day and how I wouldn't be there to walk you down the aisle, and I realized I'd missed every important moment of your life because I was too much of a coward to face my mistakes. You're right. You were a coward. Jessica felt Gilbert's hand on her shoulder, steadying her. And you don't get to walk me down the aisle. You don't get to be there at all, because you weren't there for anything else that mattered. My graduation, my first job, Mom's diagnosis, the eviction notice. You weren't there when things were hard, so you don't get to show up when things are good." David nodded, tears on his face. "I understand. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry for all of it. And I'm proud of you, for the woman you became despite having a father like me. I became this woman because of Mom, not despite you. You were irrelevant to my story." Jessica took Gilbert's hand. "But I forgive you, not for you, for me, so I can let go of the anger and move forward. But forgiveness doesn't mean relationship. It just means I'm done carrying your failures. That's more than I deserve. Thank you." He left. Jessica watched him walk away, feeling Gilbert's arms come around her from behind. "You okay?" he murmured. "Yeah, I am." She turned in his arms, looked up at him. "I'm marrying you in 2 days. My mother's health is stable. Your grandmother is here with us. I have everything that matters. He doesn't get to take any of that away. You're incredible, you know that?" "I learned from my husband." Jessica smiled. "The one who was terrified to love and did it anyway. Sounds like a smart man. The smartest, even when he's being difficult." Gilbert laughed and kissed her, and Jessica thought about how far they'd come, from a business arrangement to this, to real love, to choosing each other every day, despite fear and grief and uncertainty. 2 days later, standing in Astrid's garden under an arch of white roses, Jessica watched Gilbert wait for her at the end of a short aisle. He was crying before she even started walking, his face open and vulnerable in a way that made her chest ache. Rita sat in the front row, her hands trembling but her smile bright. Astrid stood beside Gilbert as his best person, elegant in lavender silk, her eyes shining with joy and tears. Jessica walked alone down the aisle, needing no one to give her away, because she was giving herself freely. When she reached Gilbert, he took both her hands, and she felt him shaking. "Hey," she whispered, "it's just us." "Just us," he echoed, and smiled. The ceremony was small and perfect. They said their vows through tears and laughter, promising forever without contracts or conditions, promising to be scared together, to grieve together, to love each other through every hard thing that came. When the officiant said, "You may kiss your bride," Gilbert pulled Jessica close and kissed her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "My wife. My real wife." "I love you too, my husband, my real husband." Behind them, Astrid applauded loudly. "Finally! Now can we eat? I'm starving." Everyone laughed, and they moved to tables set up in the garden for the small reception. The food was excellent, the champagne flowed, and Astrid gave a toast that made everyone cry and laugh in equal measure. "My grandson was lost for a long time," she said, looking at Gilbert with such love it was almost hard to witness. "He built walls so high and so thick I thought I'd never see him again. But this woman, this brilliant, brave, beautiful woman, she climbed those walls and pulled him out into the light. Jessica, thank you for saving him. Gilbert, thank you for letting yourself be saved. I'm so proud of you both, and so grateful I got to see this day." Gilbert stood, walked to his grandmother, and hugged her tightly. "Thank you for forcing me to live again." "Any time, darling. That's what grandmothers are for." As the sun set over the garden, Gilbert and Jessica danced to their first song as a really married couple. He held her close, his face buried in her hair, and she felt complete in a way she never had before. "No regrets?" he murmured. "Not one. You? Only that I wasted 6 weeks of our marriage pretending I didn't love you." He pulled back to look at her. "I'll never make that mistake again." "Good, because you're stuck with me now. No contract, no end date, just forever." "Forever sounds perfect." They kissed as the stars came out, surrounded by love and family and the promise of all the days ahead. Jessica had entered their first marriage ready to be broken, expecting nothing but survival. She was entering this one whole, expecting everything, and she was going to get it. 6 months later, Jessica woke on a December morning to find snow falling softly outside their bedroom window and Gilbert already awake, watching her with an expression that still made her heart skip. "Merry Christmas Eve," he murmured, pulling her closer. "I was just thinking about last Christmas. I spent it alone in this house, working through dinner, convinced that was all my life would ever be. And now? Now I have you, and my grandmother downstairs probably already making Swedish pancakes, and your mother coming for dinner, and more happiness than I knew was possible." He kissed her forehead. "Now I have everything." They'd fallen into rhythms over the past 6 months that felt like they'd been doing them forever. Morning coffee together, Gilbert working from home more often so he could spend time with Astrid. Evening walks even when it got cold. Rita visiting twice a week, her health stable enough that she'd started talking about possibly moving to assisted living closer to them instead of the care facility. "She's doing well," the neurologist had said at Rita's last appointment. "The Parkinson's is progressing, but slowly. The stress reduction and better care have made a significant difference. She could have years ahead of her." Years. The word had made Jessica cry with relief. Astrid had defied expectations, too. The moderate treatment was working better than anyone hoped. She'd gained weight back. Her energy returned in bursts. And while everyone knew the cancer was still there, still terminal, she was living fully in the time she had. "I told you I'd fight for every day," she'd said last week, beating Gilbert at chess for the 3rd time in a row. "I'm not done with you two yet. Someone has to make sure you don't get too sickeningly sweet." Now, Christmas Eve morning, Jessica and Gilbert went downstairs to find Astrid exactly where predicted, in the kitchen making Swedish pancakes with lingonberry jam, wearing the apron Jessica had given her that said, "World's best grandmother, no returns." "Finally," Astrid said, not looking up from the stove. "I was beginning to think you two would stay in bed all day." "It's 7 in the morning, Grandma." "Exactly. Half the day wasted." She turned, smiling, and Jessica saw how much stronger she looked than she had 6 months ago. The treatment and love and purpose had given her this time. "Set the table, both of you. I have plans for today, and they require you to be fed and caffeinated." Over breakfast, Astrid laid out her agenda. Christmas shopping in colonial Williamsburg, lunch at that bistro Jessica loved, then home to decorate cookies for tomorrow's dinner with Rita. "You're planning a very full day for someone who's supposed to be taking it easy," Gilbert said, but his eyes were fond. "I'm taking it easy by doing things I enjoy with people I love. That's the whole point." Astrid reached across the table, took both their hands. "Every day is a gift now. I'm not wasting them on rest I can get when I'm dead." Jessica squeezed her hand gently. "Then let's go make today perfect." They bundled up against the December cold and drove into Williamsburg. The historic area was decorated for Christmas, all garlands and candles in windows and the smell of wood smoke and cinnamon. Tourists crowded the streets, but they found pockets of quiet in small shops. Jessica watched Gilbert help his grandmother navigate icy patches on the sidewalk, his hand steady at her elbow, and felt her heart swell with love. This man, who'd been so afraid to care, now cared so openly it took her breath away. In a jewelry shop, while Astrid was distracted by silver bracelets, Gilbert pulled Jessica aside. "I need to show you something," he said quietly, leading her to a display of rings. He pointed to a stunning piece, an emerald surrounded by diamonds. "What do you think?" "It's beautiful." "Is it for your grandmother?" "It's for you." He watched her face carefully. "I know you have a wedding ring, but that was from the contract marriage. I want to give you something that represents this marriage. The real one, if you want it." Jessica looked at the ring, then at him, at the vulnerability and hope in his expression. "Gilbert, you don't have to." "I want to. I want you to have something you chose, something that makes you happy every time you look at it." He took her hand. "You gave me everything, Jess. Let me give you this." "Okay," she whispered. "Yes, I love it." He bought the ring, had it sized, and slipped it onto her finger right there in the shop. It fit perfectly, the emerald catching the light like promise. "There," he said softly. "Now it's official." Jessica laughed through tears and kissed him, not caring that they were in public, that Astrid was watching with obvious satisfaction, that strangers were smiling at them. They had lunch at the bistro where Rita met them. She'd been feeling strong enough to drive herself lately. Another small miracle. Watching her mother and Astrid together, talking about everything from politics to recipes to their shared assessment that Gilbert needed a haircut, Jessica felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "What are you thinking about?" Gilbert asked quietly, while their mothers debated the merits of real versus artificial Christmas trees. "That I'm happy. Really, truly, completely happy. And I keep waiting for something to go wrong because I'm not used to things being this good." "Nothing's going wrong. We get to keep this." He laced his fingers through hers under the table. "We get to keep each other. That's the deal now." "Best deal you ever made, Mr. Erickson." "Best deal we both ever made, Mrs. Erickson." Christmas Day was exactly what holidays should be. They opened presents in the morning, the four of them in pajamas around the tree Gilbert and Jessica had decorated together. Astrid cried over the photo album Jessica had made, full of pictures from the wedding and the past 6 months. Rita loved the adaptive kitchen tools Gilbert had researched specifically for people with Parkinson's. Gilbert opened a first edition poetry book from Jessica and actually got choked up. "Rilke," he said, running his fingers over the cover. "How did you know?" "You quote him sometimes, when you think I'm not listening." "I'm always hoping you're listening." They cooked dinner together, all four of them navigating the kitchen in controlled chaos. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, Rita's famous mac and cheese, Astrid's Swedish meatballs. The table was crowded and loud and perfect. After dinner, Gilbert stood up with his wine glass. "I'm not good at speeches," he started, "but I need to say something while I have all my favorite people in one room. Last Christmas I was alone. I'd convinced myself that was safer, that not caring meant not hurting, that isolation was protection." He looked at Jessica, his eyes bright. "And then this woman walked into my life because I was arrogant enough to think I could control love with a contract. Turned out love doesn't care about contracts. It just happens, and it changed everything." Jessica felt tears slip down her cheeks. "Grandma, you forced me to take a chance on getting married. You saved my life." He turned to Rita. "Rita, you raised an incredible daughter and welcomed me into your family even when you had every reason to be suspicious. Thank you for trusting me with her." Back to Jessica. "And you. You climbed my walls. You refused to let me hide. You loved me when I was unlovable and stayed when I tried to push you away. You're the bravest person I know. I love you more than I have words for, which is saying something because I'm usually pretty good with words." "You're doing fine," Jessica managed through tears. "I'm saying thank you, all of you, for giving me a family again, for making this house a home, for teaching me that being vulnerable isn't weakness. It's the only way to really live." He raised his glass. "To family, to love, to second chances, to every day being a gift we don't waste." They all raised their glasses, crying and laughing, and so full of love the room felt too small to contain it. Later that night, after Rita had gone home and Astrid had gone to bed, Gilbert and Jessica sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets, watching snow fall outside. "Today was perfect," Jessica said softly. "It was." Gilbert pulled her closer. "I have something else for you. I was going to wait, but I can't." He pulled out an envelope, handed it to her. Jessica opened it, confused, then gasped. It was a deed to a house in her mother's name. Gilbert, what? It's 3 blocks from here. Single story, fully accessible, with an attached suite we can hire a caregiver for when she needs it. I talked to her neurologist. Eventually, the care facility won't be enough. But this way, she can have independence and dignity and still be close enough that we can help. If she wants it. I haven't asked her yet. I wanted to run it by you first. Jessica couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare at this man who'd given her everything and somehow kept finding more to give. You don't have to decide now, Gilbert said quickly. I just wanted you to know the option exists, that I'm thinking about the future, about making sure everyone we love is taken care of. That's what family does, right? Right, Jessica whispered. Then louder, through tears, yes, God, yes, she'll love it. She'll cry and argue that it's too much, and then she'll love it. Gilbert, I don't know how to thank you. You already have, every day, just by being you. He kissed her temple. Besides, I'm selfish. I want her close. She makes great mac and cheese, and she's the only person besides you who makes me feel like I'm enough exactly as I am. They sat there as the fire burned low, planning and dreaming and holding each other. Jessica thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, desperate, exhausted, ready to be broken by life. She'd walked into that restaurant expecting a business transaction and found a life instead. What are you thinking about? Gilbert asked. About how scared I was. When you first proposed, I thought I was selling myself, giving up any chance at real love for security. And now I know I found both, and so much more. She turned in his arms to face him. I found home, Gilbert, in you, in this life we've built. I found everything I didn't even know I was looking for. Me too. He rested his forehead against hers. You know what the best part is? What? This is just the beginning. We have years ahead of us, decades if we're lucky, and I want every single one of them with you. Even when I'm old and gray and can't remember where I put my keys? Especially then, I'll help you find your keys. You'll help me remember why walls are pointless. We'll help each other with everything. Jessica kissed him, slow and deep and full of promise. Forever and always. Forever and always, he echoed. 3 years later, on a warm June afternoon, Jessica stood in the backyard of their home, watching Gilbert push their daughter on the swing set he'd installed last month. Lily was 2 years old, with Gilbert's blue eyes and Jessica's wild curls, and she had both of them completely wrapped around her tiny finger. She squealed with delight every time the swing went high, and Gilbert's laugh echoed across the yard. "Higher, Daddy, higher!" "Any higher and you'll be in orbit, sweetheart." Rita sat on the porch in her wheelchair, Parkinson's progressed but spirits high, calling out encouragement. She'd moved into the house Gilbert bought 2.5 years ago, and it had been perfect. A caregiver came during the day, but Rita could still have her independence, could walk the 3 blocks to their house when she felt strong, could be part of Lily's daily life. Astrid had died 18 months ago, peacefully in her sleep, with Gilbert and Jessica holding her hands. She'd lived 2 years past her diagnosis, long enough to meet her great-granddaughter, long enough to see Gilbert fully healed, long enough to know her meddling had worked. "I told you love would save him," she'd whispered to Jessica the day before she died. "Thank you for proving me right." The grief had been hard. Gilbert had cried more in the months after losing her than Jessica had ever seen. But he'd let himself feel it, worked through it in therapy, talked about her constantly so Lily would know her great-grandmother through stories. She would have loved this, he'd say, watching Lily discover flowers or dance to music. She would have spoiled her absolutely rotten. Now, Jessica watched her husband and daughter together and felt so full of love she didn't know how her heart held it all. Gilbert caught her eye across the yard and grinned, that real smile she'd worked so hard to earn, the one that came freely now. He'd stepped back from the company somewhat, promoted someone he trusted to CEO while he stayed on as chairman. It gave him time for what mattered: family dinners, bedtime stories, walking Lily to the park, being present for the life he'd built instead of hiding in work. Jessica had gone back to school, was finishing her law degree part-time. Gilbert supported every late-night study session, every exam stress, every victory. They were partners in everything now, supporting each other's dreams while building shared ones. "Mom," Lily called, "come push me." Jessica joined them, and Gilbert stepped back, pulling out his phone to take pictures. They'd started a tradition of documenting ordinary moments: breakfast chaos, bath time giggles, morning cuddles, all the small pieces that made up their extraordinary life. Later, after Lily was asleep and Rita had gone home with her evening caregiver, Gilbert and Jessica sat on their back porch watching the James River reflect the sunset. "Happy?" he asked, pulling her into his lap. "Impossibly. You? More than I ever imagined possible." He kissed her neck softly. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life, that I get to come home to you every day, that we made that perfect little girl together, that I'm someone's husband and father, and it doesn't terrify me anymore. You're excellent at both jobs. I have an excellent partner." His arms tightened around her. "Thank you, Jess, for taking a chance on a beast, for seeing past my walls, for loving me into being human again. Thank you for proposing a ridiculous contract marriage that turned into the greatest love story of my life." They sat there as stars emerged, holding each other, counting blessings, living in the moment while dreaming about the future. Jessica thought about that scared woman who'd walked into the Trellis restaurant 4 years ago, desperate and broken, expecting nothing but survival. She'd gotten everything instead. A husband who loved her fiercely, a daughter who was pure joy, a mother whose health was managed and whose final years would be filled with family, a home that felt like sanctuary, a life that exceeded every dream. She'd entered that first marriage ready to be broken. She'd been shielded instead, protected, cherished, loved so completely she'd become whole. And the billionaire everyone called the Beast had turned out to be the gentlest man she'd ever known. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you more," he whispered back. "Impossible. Watch me prove it, every day for the rest of our lives." And he did. 5 years after that, on what would have been Astrid's 96th birthday, the whole family gathered at her grave in Richmond. Gilbert held Lily, now 7 years old, while Jessica balanced their son James on her hip. He was 3, looked exactly like his father, and had his mother's stubborn streak. Rita was there in her wheelchair, still sharp as ever despite the Parkinson's progression. Beside her stood David, Jessica's father, who'd slowly earned his way back into the family through years of consistent sobriety and genuine effort. He wasn't close with Jessica, might never be, but he was a decent grandfather, and that was enough. "Tell us about Grandma Astrid again," Lily asked. Gilbert smiled, looking at his grandmother's headstone. "She was fierce and brilliant, and she loved with her whole heart. She believed in second chances. She believed love could heal anything. And she was right. She sounds nice. She was more than nice. She was magic." He set Lily down, knelt beside her. "She's the reason I found your mom, the reason you and James exist, the reason our family is possible. So we come here every year on her birthday and say thank you." "Thank you, Grandma Astrid," Lily said solemnly. James, not to be outdone, shouted "Thank you" at the headstone. Everyone laughed, and Jessica felt Gilbert's hand find hers, their fingers intertwining automatically after 9 years of practice. They left flowers and walked back to the cars. That night, they'd have dinner at the house, all of them together celebrating life and love and the woman who'd orchestrated it all. "She'd be proud of you," Jessica said to Gilbert as they drove home. "She'd be proud of us," he corrected, "of what we built together. From a contract marriage to this, it's a pretty good story. The best story, with the best possible ending. It's not an ending. It's just another chapter. Gilbert lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her ring finger where the emerald still sparkled. Then I can't wait to see what comes next. They drove home through the Virginia countryside as the sun set, their children chattering in the back seat, their future stretching out bright and full of promise. Jessica had been ready to be broken. Instead, she'd been loved into wholeness by the beast who turned out to be her happily ever after. And they lived it. Every single day. Together. Thank you for staying with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, the next one will completely pull you in. It's even more surprising and emotional than this. So don't miss it. Tap the video on your screen and continue the journey.